Hello, mga audience. I'm CJ,
I'm EJ.
and welcome back to another feature of.
Another feature.
It's another feature.
Another feature.
Another episode.
Is it an episode? Yeah. Episode.
It's a series.
Yeah. So I guess they're episodes.
Yeah.
Hello, mga audience.
Welcome back to another episode of Ang Kwento Natin.
Ang Kwento Natin.
Ang Kwento Natin.
Go ahead.
So this is the second week of FAHM. So we are going to be talking about, not gonna lie, like a pretty big topic, in my opinion, throughout, Filipino American History Month that kind of definitely brings attention to a lot of people, if you know what I mean. But I guess we could start by asking the question.
Oh, he's going straight in.
Straight in.
Do you not want to do like a little context? Just like listen. If you weren't here last week, essentially what Ang Kwento Natin is
Yes.
a chance for us CoCos to not only learn more about or I guess like general knowledge about Filipinx American history, but to get a chance to test each other's knowledge in a sense about these topics that we discussed. So this week, CJ researched a topic that I have no idea about, or at least he didn't tell me anything about. So we're gonna find out if I know anything about it.
We'll see.
We'll see. I probably will not.
I think you will.
I hope I do.
I think you will, at least a little bit.
We'll see. If it was anything like last week where I kept on asking you math questions for no reason, then it's gonna be horrible. Cause
No, you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's more of just like a history lesson.
mm-hmm.
Because it is Filipinx American History Month. So, let me ask you the question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what AWOC is? The abbreviation.
I want to assume that the A means American.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what the walk is.
The WOC.
I don't know.
Do you want to guess?
I do not want to guess. I'm going to get it very wrong.
Okay. Well, WOC stands for Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee.
Committee?
Committee.
With a K? Or was it with a C?
It's with a C.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was with a K. Okay.
So basically, this was an organization created in 1959, and its main purpose was basically just to unite the majority of the Filipino descent agricultural workers under one organization, and it generally just to push for better wages and working conditions for those people at the time.
Okay. So really quick, just like judging by that information you gave me, I'm assuming we're talking about post or like during the Manong generation, like mid 1900s, early 1900s, right?
Correct.
Okay,
correct. I mean, yeah, like the gist of it. But like, I think throughout today's session, we're gonna be spanning throughout the whole, at least up to 1970.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're definitely gonna span. We're definitely gonna span through a long, point of or period of time. But yeah, that's what AWOC is. But let me ask you the second question. Do you know who Larry Itliong is?
I sure do.
And your answer would be who he is?
Let me tell you. Larry Itliong was a member of the Manong generation who is primarily known for helping unite Filipino farm workers during this time period to help strike for... Let me find the words. To strike for better working conditions for both Filipinos and Mexican farm workers in California, in Delano specifically, but of course across the country, or at least across the state.
Ding ding ding. See, this is
Okay.
about No, you basically hit it on the mark. Yeah,
I'll take it. Okay.
yeah.
Of course, there's a lot more information that I could have. We're gonna stick with it. It's okay.
Of course. But basic information on who Larry was.
Mm-hmm.
Larry was born in October. On October. He was born on October 25th, 1913, in San Nicolas, Philippines.
Okay.
Okay. And
That's coming up in a week, more than a week.
it is, yeah, towards the end of FAM actually. But he basically moved to the U.S. in 1929. But when he was in the Philippines and whenever he did move here, he didn't really have the luxury of having, any type or form of electricity or like type of luxury of like of wealth.
Mm.
He was very much at base, as his roots, a natural activist at heart as well. He enjoyed nature, and he was definitely a philosopher when it comes to, environmental studies.
Okay, that's interesting.
Most def, especially, now in today's society world, with our world, like, slowly going down.
I'm kind of intrigued about the environmental studies.
Very much.
Do you know like any other information about like his education or background, I guess?
Generally not, because he did move here when he was 15, but I couldn't really find any, like information or documents based off of his, education back then.
Okay.
But as stated, he was very interested in the environment. He cared very deeply about the environment. So I guess, that's definitely like a really, really big, interesting fact about him, especially,
Sure.
But continuing on, once moving here to the U.S., he worked at the age of 15 to 16 as a farmhand in multiple states, and he mainly just worked on farms, doing manual labor, doing whatever he can to earn a living, just to get money underneath his name in order to survive. He was a very hard worker with the intuition for finding the best of what he can do with what he had,
Okay.
So he was very like in tune with finding what he could do.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but do you know like where specifically he was like working?
Yeah. So he basically came over and he kind of stayed along the West Coast mainly.
Okay.
He kind of started off in California, then went all the way up to Washington, where he stayed for a few of these years. And
I didn't know that.
he kind of just bounced like back and forth between the two different states.
That makes sense.
Definitely passing through Oregon and stuff
Yeah.
like that, of course.
I did some research too about that. Like a lot of the immigrant workers coming from the Philippines did bounce a lot through like sometimes like when the growing season was done in California,
Mhm.
they'd go up to like Oregon, like even Alaska to like canneries for
Yeah.
like fish packing, etc.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. I didn't know Larry Young was like doing that too. So
Yeah, it's really interesting to see his like background,
yeah.
Yeah. But as he continued to grow up through the years, he just definitely focused mainly on that aspect of like farming,
Mhm.
and then that was his so-called passion for the land, for the environment. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Um,
I'm assuming this is gonna take a turn soon.
Most definitely. Stay tuned. But like I said, he was definitely a hard worker. But definitely when he was around like say his 25,
Mhm.
that's when he started becoming more of like an independent activist, fighting for and getting interested in defending and fighting for his own personal human rights, for equality in payment,
Mhm.
because they were definitely getting exploited for their manual labor. They weren't getting paid enough whatsoever.
Yeah.
Plus the working conditions weren't ideal, or they weren't even good whatsoever at all.
Mhm. Do you have some of these working conditions?
Most definitely. So they were stacked in farmhouses, and they lived like next to each other on single. I think it was 8x5 blanket con sheets, and they were like basically just laying next to each other, from what I've read.
That's not fun.
It was not fun. It was very cramped, and of course, cleanliness at the time too wasn't as good. So infection, if someone was sick, you'd catch it instantaneously, which was not ideal or good whatsoever. Plus, like, I can't even imagine just like the eating and food conditions
Yeah.
that they gave. They didn't provide much whatsoever. That's hence why they were being exploited for their labor. But let me ask you this: do you know when his first strike was? What was the first strike he actively took part of? Or at least do you want to guess on like which state?
I don't know why my mind like went to Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
I know it's probably not Hawaii because
Mhm.
he's like largely, or at least most of what I know about Larry Leong was like based in his work in Delano in California, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't his first.
No.
Is what I'm thinking. So, I mean, you did mention Washington, so I'm just gonna shoot for Washington.
That is correct. So basically, his first strike was in 1946 in Washington.
Okay. So
At the
this is like
time,
post World War II, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So at the time, he was working at a lettuce farm, but the conditions were most likely at the time the worst he's ever faced, to the point where he joined up in his fellow workers strike, where at the end of the strike, which was 6 months, it was a 6 month strike. It didn't result well, and he left before.
It didn't result well.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay then.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
he left before things got to the worst.
How bad did it get for them?
So basically, at the lettuce farm, they all were sentenced to prison for rebelling against the farm owners. And at the time of the 1900s, 1940s, 1950s, prison at the time it definitely wasn't the best. It still isn't the best now, but like,
Prison's prison.
yeah, prison is prison.
Really quick question. So
Yes.
was this a primarily like Filipino led not revolt but riot not a riot
Strike?
strike
It
or
was
was it just like farm workers in general?
farm workers in general,
Okay.
people who lived or people who worked at the plant or the farm.
Okay.
Yeah. But moving on from his first strike,
And this was 1946.
1946.
Okay, then.
Yeah. He went throughout, Central California, and this is where it starts getting, more into modern history. Modern history that we know, about Larry Leong.
Yeah, this is where the bulk of what we learned in like any Filipino class,
Mhm.
or at least what we learned in. I don't know, where did we learn this stuff? I don't know where I learned this stuff.
I personally learned this like in high school through like my Filipino teacher, but it was mainly just like overall like through a brief chapter.
I agree.
Yeah.
I actually learned it. Shout out to Southwestern College's Pagkakaisa. I learned it from them when I was in middle school.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
really?
interesting, yeah.
Okay.
But, quick side note, it's hard to come across this information unless you like hear it directly from another Filipino person who's educated on the topic.
Most def. Most def.
It's time to change that.
Spark the ignition.
Spark the ignition. Ignite the spark.
Ignite the spark. Yeah. But yeah, so he traveled throughout Central California, working with a few fellow immigrants at the farms as well, and they just traveled back and forth throughout the different farms to see how they could improve specific living situations, and they tried to help the workers at the end of the day. But of course, the farm owners didn't allow that, so of course they had to keep moving in order to prevent their names from being caught on. You know what I mean?
I need that whole thing again. So good. Wait a minute.
So basically, he traveled throughout Central California, and he joined up with a few fellow immigrant farm workers and farm hands as well, and they basically just kind of collabed and worked together to try to improve different working protocols of other farms and the farm workers, and try to improve and try to talk to the farm owners to potentially up the survivability of within like living in the farms, and their
Just to like generally like improve conditions for these farm workers, essentially, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're not really like you mentioned, they're just like traveling up and down the state to. Are they actually like striking at this point? Or are they just like organizing?
At this point, they're just organizing. They're just wanderers, yeah,
Okay,
to say the least. But he ended up in Delano, California, where he did work on a grape farm from 1963 to 1965. He did work there for 2 years, but what did happen in 1965?
Are you talking about, like, related to this?
Related to this.
Oh, the Delano grape strikes.
Ding, 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 ding. Continuing on.
Delano grape strikes, yes.
Yes. So, do you know what, or can you explain to our viewers what, in general gist, was the Delano grape strikes?
So, essentially, like Co mentioned earlier, we already know that Larry Leong was traveling up and down California to organize individuals to kind of fight for these rights for Filipino, or at least farm workers in general, because we know that, especially for those who are immigrants coming into the country, and at this time, there's people coming from everywhere, the Philippines, Asia, also Mexico, other places like that. But essentially,
we're back.
Oh, is it recording right now?
It's recording.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought you were just testing it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all. Okay.
We're back again.
What do you mean? We never left.
Oh, we never. Don't mind our outfit change.
I'm wearing the same shirt.
I am not wearing the same shirt.
I'm not wearing the same shirt. It's kind of gross.
It kind of.
I got one that like kind of matches the one I was wearing yesterday. It's a different brand.
All right.
Yeah.
So fun fact, actually.
I forgot where we left off.
The Delano grapes. So fun fact, actually, the Delano grape strikes is what we actually base our unity clap at the end of GBMs for.
Oh, no way.
Really? It is. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm joking. I knew that.
I hope you're
I
joking.
did know that. It's literally okay. It's in the text that we read. Let me tell you. Let me pull it up.
Pull it
now.
up. Pull it up. Yeah. Pull it up.
I hope I have it. I'm gonna do it right now.
We are doing it right now.
Yes. You ready?
I'm ready.
The Unity Clap originated from the 1960s Delano grape strikes, when Filipino and Mexican farm workers striked against farm owners for better wages and working conditions. After the Unity Clap, we then do the Isang Bagsak, which translates to mean
One fall.
which originated from the People's Power Revolution during the time of the Marcos regime in the Philippines in the late 1960s to the late 1980s.
Our interpretation of these two practices are to start off with a slow collective clap, which gets faster and faster. We will yell Mabuhay, which means long live. And then you will respond Tayong lahat, which means all of us. Mabuhay!
Tayong lahat.
A, B.
We're not doing that.
Okay. All right. But yeah, so our unity clap at the end of GBM was it was based off of the Delano grape strikes. But random tangent. But what happened? Do you know what happened to Larry Leong after Delano? Like, do you know like what came of him and what happened?
Sounds very dark.
I'm
hoping he lived a long and prosperous life, but knowing how things actually go, it's probably not a happy fairy tale kind of ending, unless
It's kind of like it's kind of like I guess a good in between of what actually happened.
okay.
So 5 years after the Delano grape strikes, the United Farm Workers Association was created. It was composed of the AWOC as well as the organization created and led by Cesar Chavez as well.
Mm-hmm.
They combined together and they created the United Farm Workers Association.
Okay. And that's still running today, right?
Yes, it's still running today.
Okay.
But at this point, when it was founded, Larry Leong was appointed as the assistant director. But however, like a few months into it, he did resign. After
a few months.
A few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old was Larry Leong at this point? Do you know?
At this point, he was in his 60s. Yeah. So he definitely didn't agree with a lot of how the association was run was ran. So that's why he did resign and he did become an independent activist at that point.
Well, I mean, he's been pretty independent like throughout his life. Besides, like
Most definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But at this point, he branched off from being part of the collective group. But throughout time afterwards, he did continue to work, through some forms of public speaking and activism through himself, and he also helped out other aging Filipino farm workers who were also not a part of the association, and he helped assist them, get them to a better point in their life where they could, retire and potentially retire and find and start a family.
Yeah,
And
that's like something like very new, especially like for the conditions that they were put under, like different miscegenation. I don't know what that word is. Basically, no. Laws that basically restricted Filipinos from like marrying and like actually like settling down and like starting like a family, because that was basically racial segregation at that point about words.
Yeah. So at this point of his life, he worked independently for a few years until he came to his death in 1977. His legacy now lives on today. He does have a son, but it's not necessarily like specifically mentioned on who his specific immediate family was. But I wanted to bring up this question, like, do you think a lot of people, say in our community, know of Larry Leon?
In terms of our community, I believe that well, I mean, when I think about my community, like I think about like the general community here in like San Diego, and like we're pretty I would like to believe that for the most part, people who are engaged in the Filipino community would know at least the basic gist of who Larry Leong and what he did for like Filipinos of his day and age. But in terms of our youth,
yeah, that's a big one, especially.
Like I said, the only reason I knew about Larry Leong is because myself, I got engaged with my a local P.org, and that wasn't even by my doing. So if I hadn't gone out to find the information for myself, then I probably wouldn't have known much. If anything, I would have like heard the name briefly in whatever history textbook I was reading in sophomore year, but other than that, like unfortunately, probably not.
Yeah, most def. Like, I feel like his name is definitely like jumbled up. I mean, he's most definitely mentioned.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, but specific information about who he was, how he lived, what he did. The general information and the gist of his achievements, it was there, but it didn't really fully dive in, like all the way into like who he was.
And it like ties it back to what we were discussing last week in regards to like education about like not just Filipinx Americans, but like any minority here in the U.S. There's not much going into our own culture and our own history, despite us being a large part in the upbringing of this country,
Most def.
But something we're gonna have to change over the long run.
Yeah,
which is hopefully what we're doing now.
It's a slow process. I mean, that's like how things potentially change. Slow process. Slowly but surely. That's generally how this whole education will be, I guess, spread. And I think that's mainly one of the main points of this podcast, to spark the interest for us as like sources to ignite your flame, and to for y'all to seek out new information that you really wouldn't have known about until potentially watching this. But Larry Leong, he was really essential into, you know, like, I guess he was a integral piece to I guess change of labor unions of the time. He did live like a very engaging life, you know, throughout his community, throughout his society. He was definitely like a good form of leadership,
Of course.
and a person to look at throughout the time.
For those who don't know, so Cesar Chavez Day has actually been a government holiday.
Yes.
For California, if I'm correct. For California. But recently in 2019, October 25th, has been proclaimed to be Larry Itliong Day. So finally getting more of that recognition that I think he deserves as a prominent activist, especially one important to the Filipino community. So it's great to hear.
Most stuff. But thank y'all for sticking with us throughout the end of this video.
Thanks for making it to the end.
Exactly.
Unless you didn't. Cut. Catchphrase? Oh. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
If you actually.
And comment down below what the most interesting fact, or if y'all learned anything new. Comment it down below, because we're very interested to see in the comments, and seeing responses from y'all keep us, you know, motivated to make these videos.
I mean, we're gonna make them anyways.
We're still gonna make them anyways.
Honestly, if no one watches them, we're gonna make them anyways.
Thank you for our 6 views. We appreciate the 6 views.
Really? 6 views?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. That's more than I thought.
But yeah, catchphrase.
Bombs? No, it's ridiculous.
I mean,
whatever comes to mind. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What's up? Why am I saying hi? We're ending the video.
See y'all later. Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat sa lahat. Mga no.
Bakit na yun?
Kalang dumating sa buhay ko. But until next time, stay healthy and stay safe, mga audience. Bakit na yun? Kalang
Anyways.
dumating sa buhay ko.
Why did I put the